The dreams I had were scattered, coming in flashes of good and bad, some akin to nightmares, others strange visions of a life I once knew, back before I left. Then, suddenly, I was in the dark once more, quickly looking around as I was suddenly much more aware and more in control than I would have been in a dreamlike state. "Hello?" I called out, hearing my voice seem to echo on forever into the abyss. I took a few cautious steps forward, but as I had, a voice came from behind me. "Good evening, Kain. Resting well. Mortanius. What do you want?" I asked, turning to see him standing in the darkness with me. "You may believe that this is the end, however, it is far from it. The men you killed may have been the ones that caused your death, but they were not the ones who set this in motion." He spoke, wrapping his robes more tightly around his withered frame. I heard. Yes, the boy. He may have spoken about it, but he did not give you a direction. I, however, seek to remedy that. So you will tell me who started all this? No, not entirely. However, I can tell you what your next move should be. Seek out the Pillars of Nosgoth, known to the locals as the Pillars of Fate. I know them, but why would I go there? Someone will be there to answer that question. For now, I grow tired. Seek out the Pillars, Kain. Seek them out and return the favor I gave to you. Finish your purpose," he said, walking away from me, seeming to fade from existence itself. The next thing I knew was I was opening my eyes. A loud crash interrupted my rest as I shot up and looked around before getting to my feet, seeking out what could have possibly made a crash that loud in here. I had to slow myself as I saw the state of this place. The sconces now lit, and the place looking far cleaner than it had originally been, even the smell of stale death being far less intrusive. As I scanned the walls, I saw strange and somewhat disconcerting etches in the stone. Some of the glyphs spoke of magic in the Latin tongue, a language said to be dead, at least to the living word of mouth. However, it was also one I had studied and had some understanding of. The pictures showed magic users, skeletal figures, demonic entities, and even vampires. Strangely enough, the vampires seemed to be fighting back against the demons, something I personally wouldn't have thought of, as their kind was always seen as demonic all on its own. The words spoke in vague texts, some names, others speaking of a long-forgotten war. I wanted to stay and study these more. However, when I heard a faint struggle, I began heading in its direction. I quickly found what had made the noise as I rounded a corner into a deeper part of the crypt, where I saw Magnus pinned beneath a large coffin, seeming having to have tried to move it on his own, only to become trapped when it fell. Quickly, I went over and grabbed the side of the coffin, quickly pulling it off him and going to his side. "Are you hurt?" He shook his head as his pride seemed to take the brunt of the damage, catching his breath. "Thank you, sir. I was just trying to clean up and—" "You believed you could move an entire stone coffin on your own?" I asked, somewhat amused that he'd even tried. He sighed to himself at that, getting up and brushing himself off. I looked back to where he was, and something caught my eye. There was a large crack in the wall, it seeming almost thin like eggshell as I walked over, placing my hand over it, feeling a slight breeze from the other side. "What is it?" Magnus asked, watching me. "I don't know." "Stand back," I said as I stood and backed up from the wall, thrusting my foot forward and kicking the crack as hard as I could. My foot went straight through, more cracks spidering outwards from the newly formed hole. At seeing this, I backed up further, hunching over before charging and bashing my shoulder into the stone. Very little resistance hindering me as I crashed through the other side. The air was stale inside, causing me to cough a bit as I looked around. Before me in the hidden chamber, I stood before what remained of a large fountain, its water long dried up. Behind the fountain was a mural that extended all the way up to the ceiling, and I recognized the creature almost instantly as a vampire like those on the walls. However, this one was very different. Wings with sharp feathers extended from its back, painted in faded shades of black and silver. Its skin, a ghostly blue. The fountain was no exception to the beauty of the artwork that stood behind it. 3 women standing in the center with their arms outstretched, holes in their wrists where the water would have once flowed into the basin below. Willing, giving, and very much content. The basin was in the shape of a strange symbol, all lines flowing down and intertwining with one another as large, hell-like hounds drank from its carved rivers. I found myself in awe, seeing this massive chamber and what it held within. I walked my way over to the fountain, brushing my hand over the smooth and dark marble, taking in this sight fully.
What is this place?
I asked myself as I looked around, still tracing the intricate carvings. At the foot of the basin, I could see a faint text and crouched down to get a better look. Once again, it was written in Latin, and I carefully read it out, sounding out the words.
Victus. A bit ironic.
I said to myself as I looked back to see Magnus standing behind me.
How so?
He asked, walking up to the fountain and looking inside.
It means, woe to the conquered. It's a phrase they used quite often when in combat, or a threat to those that crossed me, or a mantra in a way. It's just ironic because the situation as I am now is... Never mind.
I stopped myself, sighing and looking at the fountain. Magnus walked around it, going to the back and looking up at the mural.
Who is he? Janos Aldrin, I believe, said to be the first vampire. I've seen depictions of him such as this in many texts. Oh, I see. Do you know a lot about him, sir? If you're asking that because I am born to the same curse, then no. I don't know much about him, if I am to be truthful. However, in saying that, there really isn't much about him to tell. Supposedly, he gave his life for peace, wanting to be kind to the humans and all wars. He had a warm and caring heart. It was until it was ripped from his body and thrown into holy flames. Forgive me, sir, but that's horrible.
I shrugged, going back to the fountain.
He started a fight he couldn't win, and knowing how humans are, he was a fool to try anything involving peace. Others tell of a time of war with him at the center of the conflict, describing him as a conqueror and a madman who slaughtered all those who opposed him. As to which is true, I can't say. History goes to the victorious and the truth is lost with time.
I sat on the edge of the marble, placing my hands on my knees. As Magnus came back over, he inspected one of the stone dogs, reaching into its mouth and tracing its teeth. As he did so, he quickly recoiled, holding his hand as a spat of blood fell into the basin, some of it coating the teeth where he'd cut himself. I instantly covered my mouth and nose, seeing that red ring threatening to cloud my vision and fighting hard not to take out my bloodlust on Magnus.
If you were wise, you'd cover that.
I said, a snarl in the back of my voice. Magnus looked at me with wide eyes before quickly covering his hand in the folds of his cloak, applying pressure to the small cut and stopping the bleeding.
Magnus, did you hear that?
He quickly shook his head at me, but I know I wasn't imagining things. The voice was so clear, almost like the song of a young woman carried on the wind, enchanting, yet very much haunting. Beneath me on the marble, I could have sworn I felt something grab me, jumping up to my feet and preparing for a fight. However, when I turned, I saw something that stunned me, stopping where I stood as I watched on. It was the hound, the dark marble moving as if it were flesh, its bright red eyes watching me closely, not making a sound. It seemed to study me as I studied it, Magnus quickly moving to get behind me. However, I felt no fear from this large creature. If anything, I felt compelled to move closer to it. I felt Magnus grab my arm, trying to stop me.
What are you doing?
He said in a hushed yell.
It's alright. I don't think it'll hurt us.
I reassured him, brushing him away before walking over and crouching down in front of the stone animal. I watched his eyes for a long time. Somewhere within me, I felt like it was trying to communicate, or perhaps it already was, and I was not yet ready to hear it. I slowly reached out to him, pay and receive, echoing in my mind, a curious notion that I wanted to test. The creature turned to my hand, gently leaning in and biting down, the cold spikes of stone penetrating my flesh and making me wince. However, I remained still. It was feeding from me. And once the creature had its fill, it let me go, letting out a long, haunting howl as the other stone statues came to life. The animals all looked around the room, the fountain now spewing a red liquid from the wrists of the stone women as it began to fill the basin, a red light shining from the bottom and bathing the room in crimson.
What is this? Who are you?
The ethereal voice spoke. Normally, this would send up every red flag imaginable. However, I wasn't in any fear. I felt a strange calm and welcoming within this thing's presence, and within the presence of this magic. Taking the offer and reaching my hand down into the pool. It was warm to the touch, and as I brought the red liquid to my lips, I felt that lightning feeling once more, an almost pleasurable pain as my hands tingled. The taste was not like that of blood, but more so of fine and expensive wine, sweet in taste and cooling to the body. I wiped my mouth and stood, seeing the red light fade and the marble statues becoming lifeless once more. I did not know what this magic had done to me, as when Magnus asked, I had no answer. All I really knew was my hunger was sated for the moment, and for that alone I was grateful. The necromancer hadn't given me much on what my new nature would entail, and to be fair, I didn't exactly ask either. A fool's choice on my part, as I was quickly learning that there was much more to the nature of a vampire than even the Seraphant likely knew. This magic may have very likely been the work of Janos himself, perhaps a way to feed his kin for the small price of a blood offering in return. However, this was all just speculation. I questioned as to why this place was hidden. However, the more I questioned it, the more it made sense to me. If the Seraphans sought out to eliminate every notion of the vampire plague, then it would only make sense that their enemy would want to keep their secrets hidden. As Janos was the first, any wise leader would stop the discovery of trade secrets at any cost. I would know in time what more this magic had done to me. In time, I felt as though I'd understand its hiding place that much more. I pulled one of the old blades from a crypt. Its steel vaguely rusted, and its balance was off. However, being as I had no real way of attaining a better blade, for the time, it would do. As I began preparing for my journey, Magnus came to me, watching me. "Where are you going?" "To the pillars," I said, cleaning what dirt I could off of my armor. "But why?" None of Other reasons concern you. You are safer here. I understand, he said in a solemn tone as I began to walk out, the cloud cover still thick overhead as the air smelt damp. I knew he hadn't moved as I began to leave, and I waited at the entrance for about a moment before turning back to him. So, are you just going to do what you were told? Or are you going to take action? Wait, what? He asked in surprise as he looked up at me. Do not think me a fool. You are going to follow me no matter what I tell you. Hiding from my eye while in fear of what I may say of you going against my recommendation. Are you not a man, capable of making your own choices? He stood there, silent, clearing his throat. So, I can come, sir? Do you want to? Yes? Then speak up, boy, and get yourself ready. At that, he quickly ran off to get whatever he had brought with him. I rolled my eyes. It wasn't hard to see that he was interested in my nature. And at the fountain, he, although fearful, had a deep fascination with magic. His curious nature may get him in trouble one day. However, trouble would be the only way he would learn. He needed to be thrown into the fire to know how to stoke the flames. It only depended on whether or not he would walk out of them stronger, or burn alive.
The cobblestone path became all the more cracked and overgrown as we approached the pillars. The air was cold and still, and it seemed as though even the animals had abandoned this place. What was once a magnificent sight quickly became foreboding and macabre. A heavy mist crept over the ground, overshadowing our feet and only breaking when we took another step, only to return to its hauntingly blanketed form shortly thereafter. We approached the foot of a tall iron gate, twisting roots creeping over the walls and down to the ground in tangled strands, all dead, matching the decaying atmosphere of this place. What happened here? Magnus asked, looking around in slight bouts of paranoia. I don't know, I said, walking up to the door and giving it a push. It wasn't locked. However, from the lack of care and decay, it didn't want to budge. I rooted my stance, pressed my shoulder into it, and pushed with everything I had, gritting my teeth and straining as the old door seemed to do the same before finally swinging open. The old roots on the other side snapped like cracking bone, sending a shower of splinters and withered leaves flying in different directions, before all was still again. Magnus, I gasped, needing a moment to catch my breath before motioning for him to stay back. You should stay here. I'll continue forward. Are you sure, sir? Stay here? Didn't you say I was free to make my own choices? Yes, but although you have a choice, I will not refrain from honesty. If you follow, you may die, I said as I looked back at him, seeing him take a step back. I do not know what I may be walking into. So, wait here. I shall return soon, I said to him, drawing my blade and continuing further in. The fog became thicker as I walked, and before long I was shielding my face and eyes, a dense moisture beginning to sting as I struggled to see. Then, as I entered the circle, like a curtain being pulled back, the fog broke, giving way to the base of the pillars of Nosgoth. There they were, 8 circling the rim of the stone base, with one standing proud in the center. I walked up the steps to the one in the center, placing my hand upon the slick marble and looking up. They stretched far into the sky, above the clouds, outside the realm of perceivable height, and then far beyond into the vast void. From a distance, they were a sight that I had cherished. However, now, being so close, my heart ached at their appearance. The marble was badly cracked, pitted. The once vibrant and individual symbols on each of them were faded, and looking as though they could come crashing down at any moment. It was like they were straining against the sky itself, struggling to hold it up, but quickly failing, their strength leaving them. I was lost in deep thought and emotion, feeling almost sorry for the structures before I was quickly snapped out of it, grabbing my blade with both hands and readying myself as I knew at that moment that I was not alone, a feeling from deep within me that I was being watched. I caught a glimpse of something moving between the pillars, whipping around and trying to keep my sight on them, but failing as they effortlessly eluded me. "Keep your distance, or I'll send you back to hell more swiftly than you crawled out."
There is nothing left of me to fear, vampire.
A woman spoke, seeming almost annoyed by my threat. "Then show yourself. If you hide in the shadows, I'll come in after you," I growled. When she did show herself, I didn't know what to say. She was beautiful, but only in part. Her long blonde hair flowing behind her like soft reeds among waves of water. Her face youthful, but on one side of her features was a horrific wound. Tattered skin hung in shreds down her head, her one eye but an empty socket, and much of the bone of her skull showing through the damage. Her beaded white dress was in shreds as well, and her one arm was nothing more than bone.
I am but a shadow of what I once was, Kain. I could not harm you, even if it was that which I desired.
I could see her, but also partly see through her. She did not walk, but instead glided along the ground, a spirit to haunt this place. I lowered my blade, walking up to her and actually questioning whether or not I was truly seeing her. "Who are you?"
I am Aria, and what remains of the Balance Guardian. Nothing more to ask now.
"You're the guardian of balance? But how? How did this happen?" She looked away from me at that, hanging her head, her skeletal hand reaching up to feel over the side of her broken face.
If you would sit with me for a while, I may tell you.
She said as her hand fell back to her side. I humored her, walking over and leaning against the pillar of balance as she did the same, sitting there with me, looking longingly out into the expanse of fog before us.
My story begins long ago, before your time, back when I was proud of my position, chosen to be the scion of balance at my birth, and taking pleasure in the roles and duties that came with my position. Some years after, I met the scion of the mind, not Raptor. He was cunning and intelligent, charming yet humble, and me, being the young woman caught up in the fantasies of my youth, I fell for him, and he did I. The world back then was beautiful, full of life and bursting at the seams with magic and wonder. I can remember the air itself being alive with light and beauty. However, my dream, my fantasy, and my life were all taken within the blink of an eye. Late at night, as I walked the twisting paths of the forest, I met a creature I did not know. Not Raptor, had invited me out there, saying he wanted to see me under the moonlight, or so I had foolishly believed. The creature came from the shadows, its eyes burning and blazing with flames of hate, its eyes fixed on its goal, to my love, tried to run, to fight. However, it was all for naught. The creature defiled my body, took my life, cast my damaged soul aside, and left me to rot here, asunder and adrift in the void. Not Raptor found me shortly after hearing my cries. However, by then, I was already here. Bound, trapped, and now forgotten.
As she finished, her gaze returned to the ground, her one eye growing misty. However, no tears could fall. I stood and sighed, feeling horrible for her situation, but knowing nothing could be done.
But aren't the Guardians chosen from birth? If you're dead, shouldn't another have come to take your place?
I asked. She scowled at me, however I felt her subtle anger was not cast in my direction.
Not Raptor. My love fell into a paranoia and madness, corrupting both himself and the pillars. His fall from grace dragging us down with him, plunging them into a depraved darkness and breaking the balance that was once paramount to our world. The binding that once protected our world and kept it pure is gone. No guardians will be born as long as this foul magic seated deep in the hearts of the guardians remains. The world needs to heal, and to heal, I am afraid that death is the only way.
I care not for the fate of this world.
And perhaps not for the world, but for yourself.
What do you mean? I asked. She came close to me, looking into my eyes.
I may not be able to heal the damage that has caused this decay. However, I can provide the answers that you seek.
I seek only to rid this world of those who have damned me.
Is that so? And if you find them all, if their souls are wiped from existence, what then? What would the proud king do in his absence for revenge?
I was silent as she watched me, truthfully not having an answer, or rather, not wanting to admit that she was right.
I will ask you then, what do you truly seek?
I seek a cure, I responded reluctantly, but truthfully. She smiled at me, shaking her head as she backed away.
There is no cure for death, Kain. Only release. In order to purify yourself, you must purify the dark sorcery that is now poisoning Nosgoth. Then, and only then, will you realize peace. The Nine were once sworn to use their gifts to protect this world. The plague of corruption has brought on a traitor, and my murderer. Not Raptor was driven insane by my death, and now spreads his misery and pain among the circle, the seed that is crumbling the very foundations of life itself. You must restore balance.
So then you are asking me to kill him?
Regrettably, yes. It is the only way, as the once corrupted guardians fall. Only then will the pillars be purified. And only then will you yourself be purified.
And if I do this, I can go back to how things were? I asked, and she approached me once more. I watched as she placed a hand over my chest, the the place where I had been ran through, over the reminder of my damnation that was forever engraved in my flesh. Her other hand came up to the side of my face, and faintly, I could feel her touch.
Once all is done, I promise you, you will have a choice in your fate.
She spoke softly, slowly backing away from me, her body beginning to sink into her respective pillar.
Now go. And remember, beware the unspoken.
With that last cryptic warning, she was gone, fading into the pillar and leaving me in the emptiness of the sun's circle. As I emerged back out of the fog and walked over to the gate, I found Magnus sitting on the log near the entrance, waiting patiently. "Oh, hey, what happened in there?" he asked as I approached. "Magnus, I need to ask something of you." "Oh, sure, anything, my lord. What is it?" "When we reach the next town, I only ask of you what I had asked when we had first met. I need you to get me information on a name." "Okay, I can do that." "Who?" "Not Raptor."